The Sonoma Valley in California is well known for its vineyards. But for one weekend this summer, it wasn't vintage wines, but vintage automobiles that were the flavor of the moment. The Sonoma Speed Festival schedule kicked off with a car show on the historic City Hall Plaza, where classic cars and racing icons were on display. It was the launch of an incredible weekend. And whether your palate prefers reds or whites, it was a barrel of fun as we present TopCoat's magnificent machines. From beautiful Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California, it's another episode of TopCoat's Magnificent Machines. Welcome everyone to what we think is one of the most spectacular vintage racing events in the country. It's called the Festival of Speed for good reason. Some of the most desirable and successful vintage race cars in history are all here. And we're going to show you a bunch of them, from small sports racers all the way up to vintage Trans Am and vintage Formula One cars. So if you're ready, so are we. Let's get busy. Well, truly one of the most anticipated categories here at this event is the Masters Historic Formula One Series. Some of the greatest Formula One cars of all time, racing the way they were designed to be raced, really hard on a challenging road course, with all the manufacturers, Ferrari, Lotus, Elf, and all of the other cars that we remember as being part of the golden age of Formula One.
We started in Masters, I think, 12 years ago, with just F1s, historic F1s, between about 70 to 82. So the winged era through to pre-turbo era. I think it works because we have certain restrictions that we put on all the cars. So they have to, for example, be period correct. They have to have the original livery on them, and we limit all the engines to the same revs. It's not so much about where we finish, it's just getting into one of these incredible cars, putting the helmet on and think, good God, I'm driving a Formula One car at an international racetrack. You know, pinch myself, I'm going to need to wake up, this can't be happening.
Ron relaxes behind the wheel of a very rare privateer Grand Prix car from the 70s called the LEC.
It was one of two built by David Purley's family that were manufacturers of fridges and freezers in the UK. The original car that David Purley drove, he was involved in a horrific accident at Silverstone, which he survived, but the car was crumpled into just a couple of foot. I think it's the biggest recorded crash in history, G-force wise. So for Grand Prix racing, they had to build a second car. This was the second car, and he never got to drive it.
One of the frontrunners in Masters F1 is two-time series champion Greg Thornton, who's driving a rare Lotus this weekend.
The car is the 9105, which won the Austrian Grand Prix in 1982, driven by Elio De Angelis, which was the closest ever Grand Prix finish. I've had the car for 5 years now, and we've just completely rebuilt it. The center of the car, which is underneath this body, is literally about 4.5 foot long, and it is a cone shape no wider than that. And it is an octagon box. That is the center of the car.
One of the unique features of many F1 cars from this era are the side pods and sliding skirts that pioneered the science of ground effects. They also made it a challenge to prepare the cars.
The car is a very responsive car. 1/4 inch in the wrong direction of a wing or a gurney or a nose or the rebound or the spring settings or anything like that changes the car by anything up to 2 or 3 seconds a lap. Hyper sensitive.
1976 McLaren M23, the last M23 ever made, which is pretty cool. Chassis number 14 is actually the 13th one made, but they don't agree with my lucky number, so they put 14 on there. This is the only privateer car that McLaren ever let go of, and Brett Lunger and his family bought it. It's pretty much as it was. We've probably tightened up the chassis a little bit since originally ran. We've been racing it pretty hard. We've been having a really good time with it. So it's just it's a wonderful piece. The M23s had Peter Revson and Denny Hume, James Hunt won the World Championship in M23 the year that this car was created. They knew they were going to move on to what's called the M26, and so they decided that they'd let this one go, and I'm so happy that they did.
Well, Bruce McLaren's name became synonymous with excellence in Formula One. And back in the middle 1990s, his company decided to get into the brand new supercar category with the fabulous McLaren F1. This is the racing variant of the F1, the F1 GTR Longtail, and this is the first F1 Longtail to win a world-class championship race. It's a magnificent automobile worthy of 200 miles an hour with almost 600 horsepower. We'll be back with more on TopCoat's Magnificent Machines here at Sonoma Raceway.
TopCoat's Magnificent Machines is brought to you by RockAuto.com. All the parts your car will ever need. Borla, the world's most winning exhaust. And by TopCoat. Don't just coat it, top-coat it.
Welcome back to TopCoat's Magnificent Machines. The Sonoma Speed Festival is the brainchild of a local businessman and vintage racer. Standing next to Jeff O'Neill, what a great weekend he's having. He's driving this real deal Ferrari GTO. And what's it like to be in a car that is so desired by so many people?
Well, it's truly unbelievable. A great pal of mine owns it, brought it out. They are extraordinary to drive. There's a reason why they are so special. They are unbelievable.
And we need to thank you because you had a lot to do with this event happening in the first place, I guess.
Well, I wanted great collectors to bring their cars out and have a forum to race them. And we had about 350 entries. We took 200 of the greatest cars in the world. We wanted to bring an environment, a festival. We want young people, we want old people, we want everybody in between. But best of all, we've got amazing cars.
I think I speak for a lot of people when I say, I want to be you.
I got to tell you, I do pinch myself every once in a while.
In stark contrast to the speed of a Ferrari GTO, we now offer you a unique collection of competitors whose cars are a century old.
Well, we're kind of a ragtag group of ragtime racers that got together, cars all across the U.S. Every one of them is a 100-year-old race car, an authentic race car. And these cars changed so much from year to year and car to car because they were still learning their way. And they were basically built in blacksmith shops in some cases, using the same tools that they used to make, buggies. That National Car Company was actually founded in Indianapolis in 1900. And they were the car to beat for many years. And in 1911, they entered 3 cars, and we have one of them here today. It's the only one that has survived. The other one that you might be interested in is a 1916 Sturdivant. It's actually made from a World War I aircraft engine and a 1916 Auburn chassis. It's sad that so many people have forgotten or never knew this part of our motorsports history because this was the genesis. This was the beginning.
One of the most fascinating cars here at the Sonoma Speed Festival is this 1965 Shelby De Tomaso P70. We're not really used to hearing the name Shelby and De Tomaso together. De Tomaso designed the body and the chassis, and Peter Brock and Carroll Shelby, they decided to drop in a 5-liter V8 with 400 horsepower and Weber downdraft carburetors. But for whatever reason, the project was abandoned, and this became one of the coolest race cars that never raced.
F11 is the only product in the world you can confidently and safely use on everything, even valuable collector cars like this, right, Scott?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, this car is a gorgeous car. You know, a lot of people save a lifetime to get a car like this. We're talking an '89 Ferrari Mondial, and it's just stunning. But more importantly, it's stunning for many reasons. As an example, one thing with F11 is incredible for protection and maintaining the exterior of this vehicle. But also it's just as amazing on the interior. You know, when it comes to leather like this is a really high grain leather, okay? It's also an old leather. Well, this has a tendency to crack, UV damage. Well, with F11, you don't have to worry about that. Not only that, but it's so easy to apply. And remember, here's something else too. Keep in mind, this 2-ounce bottle will literally do this entire car, top to bottom.
That's amazing. Yeah, it takes very little. And actually, after you get a few coats on it over a couple of months or two, you can probably use less than that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The minute you get that first coating on, you know, you're using an ounce if.
Yeah.
And that's everything.
Right.
As a matter of fact, watch this. So all you have to do here is you just spray it and apply it. And just start buffing it in, no different than you would with the exterior of the car. And what's great about this is it's going to help this for the UV stability, 1, and 2, it's going to keep it nice and supple and this entire interior that way. So if you want to make your car look as good as this one, check us out at TopCoat.tv.
Well, back in 1966, the SCCA created the Trans-American Racing Series, better known as Trans Am. It was a pony car road racing series, and primarily Chevy Camaros and Ford Mustangs. Oh, wait. This isn't a Mustang, this is a Falcon. Yes, and it raced in the Trans Am. Back in 1966, this was a privateer car, raced at Riverside, and actually finished 6th. Let's hear it for the little guy. And let's hear more about Trans Am when we return to Sonoma Raceway on TopCoat's Magnificent Machines. Welcome back to TopCoat's Magnificent Machines here at the Sonoma Speed Festival. This 1969 Camaro, racing in the historic Trans Am series, was once raced by the late Brock Yates, and I'm proud to say he was a good friend before his passing. He loved cars like this, big American race cars with powerful V8s, 4-speed transmissions, and plenty of attitude. Well, we wanted to find out more about the historic Trans Am series, and we knew just who to ask.
So historic Trans Am really came about in the very early 90s when some of these cars were first found, sometimes in old barns, sometimes in old fields, barely resembling the cars that raced back in the day. Our particular age band is from 1966 to 1972, which many people will consider the golden age of Trans Am racing. You have to remember that in '66, the cars were literally showroom cars that could be purchased, modified slightly, and taken to the racetrack beginning in Sebring in '66. By 1970, 71, 72, they were literally full purpose-built race cars.
The car is actually the very first Carcraft Boss built for the factory team car. It was actually run by Shelby Racing, and it competed in some of the 1969 Trans Am races. It's probably the most iconic Boss there is. I've owned the car now for about 4 years, over 4 years. I've raced it, I come across from Australia and race it on a regular basis. So it's a case of, I guess you point it and hit the throttle and hope the whole thing just sticks and goes where you want it to go, and get ready to slide a little bit. It's just an old dinosaur in its own way. When you hear them all fire up, it's, you have these visions of T-Rexes and everything else just circulating and being angry and hungry. And they're hungry until you get them out there and you can let them stretch their legs.
In 1969, Penske and Mark Donohue built 2 Camaros for the Trans Am Race Series, where they won the championship that year with Mark driving. This particular car is the only surviving car of the 2 that were originally built. The other one had a building fall on it, actually, in an earthquake in Mexico after the Trans Am season had ended and the car had been sold to Mexico. One particular interesting thing about this car is it has a vinyl roof on it, and they put that on the car because they acid dipped the body before the car was put together, and they left it in a little too long, so the roof was wavy. And Mark thought the best way to hide it was to put a vinyl roof on it, so they did that. And then finally, after a few races and enough complaining about it, the SCCA said, take the vinyl roof off. So they did. So it's set up right now. The livery of the car is as it ran with the vinyl roof.
I think all the factories have great stories going on. It's unfortunate that Dodge only did the 1 year, Dodge and Plymouth.
The Challenger also had an acid-dipping drama of its own back in the day, when officials raised the roof over its illegal roof.
So they put a call into Chrysler and went down to the Monterey dealer, Dodge dealer, got a brand new 1970 Dodge Challenger off the showroom, chopped the top of it off, chopped the old thin top off this one and welded it on. The way they went racing, they let them run. I've always been a muscle car guy, and a Mopar guy, so I bought the Rusty Jowett Camaro that my son now runs, and then a year and a half, 2 years later, the Challenger came up for sale. The guy that was selling it knew I was a Mopar fan. I was the only one they offered the car to, and I took it. It's just a hoot to drive these things, especially now riding with my son side by side. It's a blast.
I think I got the Javelin in 1988. I still have it, still running all the time. This was actually a barn find in Mexico City. The car was very inexpensive, so I contacted the guy and he sent me some pictures, and I bought the car sight unseen on pictures.
In addition to the Javelin, Ken also owns several other potent pony cars.
1970 Boss 302, one of the Bud Moore cars. It was actually leftover, driven in '71 by Peter Gregg. And also a 1966 notchback Mustang that was running Trans Am. And all different cars, all different kinds.
Yeah, we love those big, scary Trans Am machines like the Camaros and the Mustangs and the Mopars with the V8 engines, but there was an under 2-liter category in Trans Am where cars like this were dominant. A 1966 Alfa Romeo 1600 GTA. This car won the championship in 1966 with 3 victories and 8 top 5 finishes. When we come back, more classic Alfa Romeos to show you on TopCoat's Magnificent Machines here at Sonoma Raceway.
TopCoat's Magnificent Machines is brought to you by Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever. Custom Auto Sound, the originator of classic car OEM fit radio since 1977. And by TopCoat, the best coatings in the world.
Welcome back to TopCoat's Magnificent Machines here at Sonoma Raceway. This is a 1939 Alfa Romeo 6C 2500 SS, and believe it or not, this beautiful car was originally designed to race at Le Mans. Of course, the Italians have always been known for fabulous bodywork, but the French might have an issue with that, as we found out.
Our collection is limited or focused on French cars, both pre-war and post-war. So all the cars lined up here are all French. Some of them are racing cars from the 30s and 50s, Grand Prix cars, and some are touring cars from pre-war. This Bugatti is a 1936 Bugatti Adelante, designed by Jean Bugatti, the son of Ettore Bugatti. Very well sorted, and one of the most stylish of the Bugattis. This is a Delahaye, 135 Delahaye, pre-war car, and so it's maybe one of the most famous designs of all time. Another combination of sculptural beauty, performance, and very rare in the sense that there's a very limited production.
The Mullen display also includes some French competition cars.
We've got a pre-war Talbolago 4.5 liter and
and a post-war Tabolago 4.5 liter, both designed by Tabolago but styled by Pagani. Ultimately, because France went through some tough times after the war, the opportunity to continue and build and celebrate those cars kind of disappeared.
I know what you're saying. Hey, there's the original Stingray Racer that Billy Mitchell of GM designed, and after it raced for a short time, he used it as a daily driver. But it's not the original Stingray Racer. This is called the Centurion. It was built by a guy by the name of Bud Goodwin, a company called Fiberfab, back in the 1960s that built all kinds of weird, crazy sports car bodies. 327, 350 horse Chevy engine, that's from a Corvette, and a 4-speed transmission. But no, this is not the original Stingray Racer, but it could pass for it. As we wrap things up here at Sonoma, we want to honor another of the Mullen Collection's French fleet as our TopCoat's top pick. This Delage D63L is one of 5 cars that were built in 1946, and it competed in both Grand Prix and endurance races following World War II. Well, it's time to bring down the curtain on the inaugural Sonoma Speed Festival here at Sonoma Raceway, as the owners of all of these outstanding vintage cars are packing up and getting ready for the ride home. And we hope you've enjoyed our high-speed trip back in time, and we'll catch you next time on TopCoat's Magnificent Machines.